Hello, this is Will Davis, and this is my synthesis for Chapter 8 and 9 for Environmental Science. Chapter 8 and 9 seem to be mostly over biodiversity, and biodiversity is a term given to the variety of life on Earth and the natural patterns it forms. The biodiversity we see today is the fruit of billions of years of evolution, shaped by natural process and increasingly by the influence of humans. It forms a web of life of which we are an integral part and upon which we are fully dependent. This diversity is often understood in terms of the wide variety of plants, animals, and microorganisms. So far, about 1.75 million species have been identified, mostly small creatures and insects. The first key part of the chapters, this is chapter 8, seem to be about biological and mass extinction. Biological extinction refers to the normal extinction rate. These species go extinct simply because not all life can be sustained on Earth, and most species simply cannot survive. And this would be if a single species goes extinct. And then mass extinction is the widespread event that wipes out the majority, over 50%, of the living plants and animals. This would be like when the meteor hit and killed off all the dinosaurs. And the way it affects me would be bees are currently thought of as possibly going extinct. And there was a website I saw, and it said between 2006 and 2007, beekeepers used the U.S. or around the U.S. began to report losses of 30 to 90% of their domestic hives. In many cases, more than half of the sickened colonies showed mysterious signs of mass worker bee disappearance, a symptom never before on this scale seen by beekeepers. Without it, thousands of adult worker bees, a hive, cannot sustain life and will eventually die. And the reason that would affect me would be that bees pollinate flowers, and they're good to look at, but they also pollinate crops that we need to survive. And what I can do is plant bee-friendly plants such as wildflowers and flowering trees, and don't use pesticides and herbicides in my garden. And that's because pesticides have a sublethal effect on bees, not killing them outright, but instead impairing their development and behavior. And then with the trees, they are almost better than plants because 5 or 6 trees can provide as much forage for bees as an acre of wildflower meadows. They also provide a single source of nectar that bees can find easily to harvest. Another thing covered in Chapter 8 was habitat fragmentation. Habitat fragmentation describes the emergence of discontinuation in organisms' preferred environment, causing population fragmentation and ecosystem decay. Habitat fragmentation can be caused by geological processes that slowly alter the layout of the physical environment. Habitat fragmentation is caused by 5 phenomena. The first is reduction in total area of the habitat. The second is decrease of interior and edge ratio. The third is isolation of one habitat fragment from another area of habitat. 4 is breaking up of one patch of habitat into several smaller patches. And the last one is decrease in the average size of each patch of habitat. And the way that this would affect me personally would be deer in Iowa. Pushes them out of the woods and into urban areas, which can cause a safety hazard and endanger the animals. In fact, Iowa is among the top 5 states in which drivers are most likely to be involved in a deer vehicle crash, and in 2008 these incidents accounted for 12% of the state's reported crashes. Because of increasing traffic, higher deer population, and human encroachment into deer habitat, deer vehicle crashes have become a growing problem for urban areas. And in this particular situation, I feel like the damage might already be done, and it would be a lot more about population control than the habitat fragmentation. A good way that we handle that in the United States, and particularly in Iowa, is we have city limit hunting to control the population so they're not encroaching on what we have already done or we have already built, such as roads and houses and subdivisions. So we are working with that, but most of it's already done. It won't work in other areas to keep the biodiversity and safety of animals and humans when they have been affected by habitat fragmentation. Then in chapter 9, they start to talk about the forest and deforestation. I actually did a paper on this a couple years ago, so I took a lot of facts from that, and I just kind of I'm going to read off of them. Over the past 400 years, mass deforestation across the globe has left only 22% of Earth's original forest cover remaining. Every year, at least 34 million square kilometers of forests are cleared. The forests are cleared for conversion for agriculture, timber harvest, expansion of cities, road building, and many other reasons. This deforestation has caused an environmental change and loss in biodiversity of the world's wildlife. And basically what that is saying is that throughout our history, especially in the United States, we have taken most of our timber as for granted. We just cleared it out and assumed there was always going to be more, because there was. And now that we're getting to the future, we're realizing that we can't just do that. We need it, and it was a lot more important to us than we realized. And the way that this affects me is it regulates the water cycle and the O2 levels on the planet. Forest soils are moist, but without protection from sun-blocking tree cover, they quickly dry out. Undistributed forests can have a very low rate of soil loss, approximately 2 metric tons per square kilometer. Deforestation generally increases the soil erosion by increasing the amount of runoff and reducing the protection of soil from tree litter. This can be an advantage in excessively leached tropical rainforest soils. Forestry operations themselves also increase erosion through the development of roads and use of mechanized equipment. Trees also help perpetuate the water cycle by returning water vapor back into the atmosphere. Without trees to fill these roles, many former forest lands can quickly become barren deserts. One such theory is that a large section of Sahara Desert actually consists of rainforest. Trees also play a critical role in absorbing the greenhouse gases that fuel global warming. Fewer forests mean larger amount of greenhouse gases entering the atmosphere and increased speed and severity of global warming. Deforestation, often cited as one of the major causes of deforestation, often cited one of the major causes of the enhanced greenhouse effect. Tropical forests are responsible for approximately 20% of the greenhouse gas emissions, mainly in the tropical areas, could account for up to 1/3 of the total carbon dioxide emissions. And what can we do to help? Well, personally, I could recycle so I don't waste so many resources from the trees. And on a large scale, the human race could use the quick solution would just stop cutting down trees, but that is not fiscally responsible, and I don't think we could really handle it. We're not at that point that we could just quit cutting down trees for resources. A more workable solution is to carefully manage forest resources by eliminating clear cutting to make sure that forest environments remain intact. The cutting that does occur should be balanced by planting of young trees to replace older ones. The number of new tree plantations is growing each year, but their total still equals a tiny fraction of the Earth's forested land. And then one of the last things covered in this section were the coral reefs, and it's come out in the news lately that they think the Great Barrier Reef is dead. Some people say no, that's not the fact. It's still got life in it, but others claim that it's been bleached to death and it no longer is going to be able to sustain their life, which would be a great impact to the biodiversity of that land. But in general, coral reefs are a diverse underwater ecosystem held together by calcium carbonate structures secreted by coral. Although coral reefs look like plants or even rocks, coral reefs are built by colonies of tiny animals found in the marine water that contains few nutrients. Most coral reefs are built from stony coral, which in turn consists of polyps that cluster in groups. The polyps belong to a group of animals known as Cnidaria, maybe Cnidaria, which also includes sea anemones and jellyfish. But unlike sea anemones, coral reefs secrete hard carbonate exoskeletons, which support and protect the coral polyps. Most reefs grow best in warm, shallow, clear, sunny, and agitated waters. They are known for their biological hotspots because of the massive amount of species that live in and around the coral reef. And how does this affect me? Living in Iowa doesn't really, but if I lived along the coastline, it would affect me greatly because they are important for many different reasons aside from being a major hotspot for biodiversity. They protect coastlines from the damaging effects of wave action and tropical storms, provide habitats and shelter for many animals during those events too. So it would be good for keeping the coast intact, and if I lived on the beach and was rich. How can the average person help? Just simply picking up trash and leaving shells and animals in tide pools would be for people on the coast, but people around the world lowering their greenhouse gas emissions would help. Let's see. And coral reefs. Okay. The now increasing concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmospheres are causing ocean waters to warm and making them more acidic. Warm water causes bleaching episodes in which coral polyps expel the microscopic algae living inside their tissue and that inside their tissues and nourishes them. Algae provides corals color, so the reefs turn white. Coral can recover, but the process stresses and may kill them. So that is why we need to worry again about the greenhouse gas emissions, because even in Iowa, if I'm driving a big truck around 24/7 and running through a bunch of gas, it might be affecting a reef off the coast of Australia and causing it to die. And what questions should we be asking about the sustainability is what I mainly thought of. And can we sustain biodiversity? I didn't think this music was going to be playing, so sorry about that. But yeah, my question is, can we just sustain the biodiversity on the planet and it seems like we can. It's going to be hard, and the way that our governments are doing the best, I found out at the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. World leaders agreed to a comprehensive strategy for sustaining development, meeting our needs while ensuring that we leave a healthy and viable world for future generations. One of the key agreements adopted at Rio was the conservation of biological diversity. This pact, among the vast majority of those governments, sets out commitments for maintaining the world's ecological underpinnings, as well as go about the business of economic development. The convention establishes three main goals